this land, calling this land their home, and caring. We accept responsibility with the land and to protect it. Our relationship with our Indigenous partners and friends, a relationship of respect and trust. Welcome to worship in our community of faith, inviting you to step over kind of the threshold into joining us for a time of discernment. And perhaps there's something we feel sorry for and we want to let go of it, and we can certainly do that. Perhaps there are challenges a day at a time where we are public and explicit. And the standards that we hold ourselves to are welcome, and we seek to live into being affirming, welcoming, inclusive people. Us to have courage to know that God's transforming love is for people of all skin colors, gifts and skills, abilities, ages, sex, genders, gender identities, and gender expressions. So welcome. We are glad for the presence of each of you this gathering and on YouTube.
As we listen, O God, your word enters our heart. Your waters of grace wash over us. We hear good news that touches our beings and provides release. Our sense of well-being is increased. Thanks be. Amen. And readings from the Hebrew Scriptures. Psalm 23 from the James Moffat Bible. The Eternal shepherds me, I lack for nothing. He makes me lie in meadows green. He leads me to refreshing streams and revives life in me. He guides me by true paths as he himself is true. My road may run through a glen of gloom, but I fear no harm, for thou art beside me. Thy club, thy staff, they give me courage. Thou art my host, spreading a feast for me, while my foes have to look on. Thou hast poured oil upon my head. My cup is brimming over. Yes, and all through my life, goodness and kindness wait on me, the Eternal's guest, within his household evermore. And readings from the Christian Scriptures, the New American Bible, Ephesians 5, verses 8 to 14. Live as children of the light. For you were once darkness, but now you are light in the Lord. Live as children of light. For light produces every kind of goodness and righteousness and truth. Try to learn what is pleasing to the Lord. Take no part in the fruitless works of darkness. Rather, expose them. For it is shameful even to mention the things done by them in secret. But everything exposed by the light becomes visible. For everything that becomes visible is light. Therefore, it says, awake, O sleeper, and arise from the dead, and Christ will give you light. And John 9, verses 1 through 41. Jesus heals the man born blind. As he passed by, he saw a man blind from birth. His disciples asked him, Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind? And Jesus answered, neither he nor his parents sinned. It is so that the works of God might be made visible through him. We have to do with the works of the one who sent me while it is day. Night is coming when no one can work. While I am in the world, I am the light of the world. And when he said this, he spat on the ground and made clay with the saliva and smeared the clay on his eyes and said to him, "Go wash in the pool of Siloam," which means sent. So he went and washed and came back able to see. His neighbors and those who had seen him earlier as a beggar said, "Isn't this the one who used to sit and beg?" Some said, "It is," but others said, "No, he just looks like him." He said, "I am." And so they said to him, "So how were your eyes open?" The man called Jesus made clay and anointed my eyes and told me, "Go to Siloam and wash." So I went there and washed and was able to see. And they said to him, "Where is he?" He said, "I don't know." They brought the one who was once blind to the Pharisees. Now Jesus had made clay and opened his eyes on a Sabbath. So then the Pharisees also asked him how he was able to see. And he said to them, "He put clay on my eyes and I washed, and now I can see." So some of the Pharisees said, "This man is not from God because he does not keep the Sabbath." But others said, "How can a sinful man do such signs?" And there was a division among them. So they said to the blind man again, "What do you have to say about him since he opened your eyes?" He said, "He is a prophet." Now, the Jews did not believe that he had been born blind and gained his sight until they summoned the parents of the one who had gained his sight. They asked, "Is this your son, who you say was born blind? How does he now see?" His parents said, "We know that this is our son and that he was born blind. We do not know how he sees, nor do we know who opened his eyes. Ask him. He is of age. He can speak for himself." His parents said this because they were afraid of the Jews, for the Jews had already agreed that if anyone acknowledged him as the Messiah, he would be expelled from the synagogue. For this reason, the parents said, "He is of age. Question him." So a second time they called the man who had been born blind and said to him, "Give God the praise. We know that this man is a sinner." He replied, "If he is a sinner, I do not know. One thing I do know is that I was blind and now I see." So they said to him, "What did he do to you? How did he open your eyes?" He answered them, "I told you already, and you did not listen. Why do you want to hear it again? Do you want to become his disciples too?" They ridiculed him and said, "You are that man's disciple. We are the disciples of Moses. We know that God spoke to Moses, but we do not know where this one is from." The man answered and said to them, "This is what's so amazing, that you do not know where he's from, yet he opened my eyes. We know that God does not listen to sinners, but if one is devout and does his will, he listens to him. It is unheard of that anyone ever opened the eyes of a person born blind. If this man were not from God, he would not be able to do anything." They answered and said to him, "You were born totally in sin, and are you trying to teach us?" Then they threw him out. When Jesus heard that they had thrown him out, he found him and said, "Do you believe in the Son of Man?" He answered and said, "Who is he, sir, that I may believe in him?" And Jesus said to him, "You have seen him, and the one speaking with you is he." He said, "I do believe, Lord," and he worshiped him. Then Jesus said, "I came into this world for judgment, so that those who do not see might see, and those who do not might become blind." Some of the Pharisees who were with him heard this and said to him, "Surely we are not also blind, are we?" Jesus said to them, "If you were blind, you would have no sin. But now you are saying, 'We see,' so your sin remains." In these ancient words is wisdom. In these words, we find wisdom for today. Thanks be to God.
I want to thank everyone who is helping out today. The music has been amazing as always. Thank you. And we owe quite a debt of thanks to those who are working on the computer system, on the internet system, to make sure that we are live outside of this church. I tend to get very nervous when it comes to electronic equipment, how well it's going to work. So some of you may remember back when we had firm meetings after church, I would disappear through church is because I was afraid something would go wrong. And I would try and go down and make sure everything was set up well in advance and was operating, and then not leave the room until things started for fear that something would go dreadfully wrong. So I can appreciate the tension and stress that's carried by people who are doing the technical work both here in the congregation and at home, who we don't see every week. The title for today's reflection is Licking the Bowl, and I don't think I could have come up with a better picture than this. Before I speak, there are a couple of things I need to clarify, one of which is I'm not United Church of Canada clergy. That's important for everyone to know. And we're doing some things today that may seem like they don't fit together. It's Lent, and I'm dressed like this. We have colorful stuff out here, and it's Lent. But it's also the day we're celebrating Pi Day, and this is also the day that we are celebrating the International Day to End Racism. So if all of these things converging at once, you're going to get a little bit of each. It's like going to a potluck where you have a little bit of everything that you can taste. The title of today's sermon may kind of conjure up memories for you as it does for me with being invited to lick possibly one of the bowls that prepared something really, really special for lunch or for supper, like the dessert bowl. And you got to kind of taste a little bit of what everybody was going to be getting later, or possibly that extra little bit of frosting that was made, that was left over. My mother used to cut a little piece of corner out of the cake to taste it. So you come along and see the corner, and everyone in our home would make the corner bigger and bigger and bigger, and it got to be this little tiny piece of the corner. It got to be quite large, and sometimes large enough to be an entire piece, as everyone going by seemed to think that they could enlarge it just slightly without my mother noticing. That's the good part. The bad part is that some people are licking the bowl to try and get nutrients. Just a taste of the justice and equity and fairness that the rest of us have been experiencing for most of our lives. Just a taste. Zola Neale Houston said, "I have been in sorrow's kitchen, and I have licked out all of the pots." I'm hoping that we can put a sign at the outside of Sorrow's Kitchen saying, "Out of business." Today, we're doing what people have done for thousands of years in church settings. We're looking back, we're looking at the present, and we're looking to the future. So Pi Day was actually a few days ago. It was March 14th. And we're looking forward to the International Day for the Elimination of Racism, which is March 21st. There's something about the wording of the James Moffat Bible that I find intriguing. It's not an easy read translation. There are times when James Moffat nails it. And there are times that he brings out meanings that we don't always pick up. I like how he translates the 23rd Psalm as a glen of gloom. To me, discouragement is a natural result of feeling chronic, systemic discrimination that many people of different skin colors and sexual orientations and gender identities experience every day. And as we reflect on Pi Day, my mind keeps going back to the epistle reading, Ephesians 5:8. "For you were once darkness, but now you are the light of the Lord. Live as children of the light." Pi stands for public, intentional, and explicit. National Affirming Day, or Pi Day, is a call for affirming congregations and people to live out the spirit of the risen Christ in a way that is planned, that is very intentional, that is public, and that is explicit. And the same principle applies to the day of the elimination of racism. We're to live out the spirit of the risen Christ by planning to be public and explicit in our work to help reduce racism, prejudice, and discrimination. There's a problem in Christian churches, and I'm going to name it. There are a few churches that give a sense on their website, in their communications by email and their phone calls, that they are welcoming, and they aren't. So I'm going to explain what it means to be welcoming by their definition. It means you're welcome to come if you are a sexual or gender minority person. You're welcome to attend. You're welcome to donate money. And that's where the welcome stops. You're not welcome to be in a leadership role, to get married in the church, to celebrate your relationships. In my opinion, it's like inviting someone over to your home after Sunday church service for lunch, and then telling them, well, you're welcome to be here, but you aren't welcome to drink anything, to eat anything, or to use the restroom. I wouldn't consider that to be a very warm welcome. The practice of some churches that portray themselves as welcoming LGBTQ plus people is about a 1/16 of an inch deep and maybe a 1/2 inch wide. And I think it violates the principles of Ephesians 5, verses 8 and 9. Live as children of the light, for light produces every kind of goodness and righteousness and truth. The truth of their theology and practice of the congregation is really not being expressed openly. In that way, they are not living as children of light because they're keeping their doctrine in the dark. The gospel narrative is extremely long this week. In the gospel narrative, there's a blind man, and the disciples want to know what caused his blindness. Was it his sins or his parents' sins? Jesus replied that no one's sins are responsible for the man's blindness. After the healing, the blind man is able to walk and interact in society shame-free, no longer carrying the stigma of being a terrible sinner or the child of terrible sinners. When the man is able to enter society as all other people, both he and his parents are questioned by religious leaders, and the questioning seems to have a sense of threat to it. The parents tell the religious leaders to ask their son what took place, probably because they were afraid of the religious leaders. Elements of this gospel story may resonate for LGBTQ plus people who have long experienced religious leaders wanting to blame either them or their parents for their sexual orientations or their gender identities. Blaming parents. Well, if you'd just been a better parent, if you'd just done a better job of being a parent, you wouldn't have had a gay, lesbian, bisexual, or trans child. And blaming LGBTQ plus people, this comes in a few forms. There are people who seem to think that if we just pray hard enough, go to church long enough, spend enough time reading the Bible, that we could be straight. And there's another form of blaming trans and queer people for who they are. And it seems to be based on the idea that LGBTQ plus people wouldn't exist if they didn't see other LGBTQ plus people. And that's behind some of the bills in the United States that are casually referred to as the Don't Say Gay bills. The American Civil Liberties Union website provides information about anti-LGBTQ plus legislation across America. They are tracing 378 anti-LGBTQ plus bills in the United States now. Now, we're a Canadian church. And you may be thinking, this has nothing to do with us. It's not directly impacting on Canada. It's not directly impacting on McDougall United Church. This may actually make our role even more important. February 17, 2023, Parkland school shooting survivor and social media activist David Hogg tweeted this: "I met a transgender sixth grader today whose family is considering asylum in Canada because of the threats she's gotten. They've already had to leave their home state of Texas. We can't call ourselves a free country until everyone can exist as themselves without fear." As a church that provides online church services, we are intentional and explicit with what we say and do. The messages that we send through Zoom, through our YouTube account, on our Facebook accounts are very public, planned, and explicit. The influence that we have extends beyond the walls of this congregation, beyond the city of Edmonton, beyond the province of Alberta, beyond Canada. Rabbi Stacy Ogner notes, being part of a minority people means being obligated to pursue justice for all minorities. And I'm going to add this comment. I believe that members of majority groups have an even greater responsibility to end systemic prejudice and discrimination against all minority groups, because we are the people of power. And with that power comes responsibility to foster social justice. What does God ask us to do? Micah 6:8, to do justice and to love goodness. When we do justice, people recognize the Spirit of God is resting on us, and they understand that we are here to help the risen Christ proclaim liberty and to let the oppressed go free. Part of our spiritual calling is to walk with people through the valley of the shadow of death, to walk with people through the glen of gloom. And we cannot do that if we are in a spiritual closet. We need to be public, intentional, and explicit to walk with people through the valley of the shadow of death. I wish I could remember the bishop's name, but I glanced at his sermon and I caught something that I hadn't planned on sharing, but I'm going to, as it ties in with the healing story of the blind man in the gospel reading. He mentions that when Jesus spit on the mud, it was the divine mixing with dirt that healed the blind person. When we are publicly explicit and intentional in what we do, it is the divine Spirit mixing with the dirt of humanity and the rough spots of human life that touches lives and that changes them irrevocably. And with the Spirit of the risen Christ living in our souls, we can be open and explicit enough to bring comfort and hope to all people who enter our lives. Amen. You are invited to come up in a moment and to light prayer candles for prayer requests that you have. Our hymn is Many Are the Light Beams, and that's in Voices United number 588. And we'll be singing verses 1, 3, and 5. Our prayer is, O God, my trust in your mercy, and my heart is joyful with salvation. For you have heard my prayer, you have heard my prayer. Healing God, we remember a 14-year-old gone through 2 emergencies, surgeries, and is battling. Shepherd We are painfully aware of how imperfect love is expressed within our world. So we turn once more to you. In your goodness and grace, hear the prayers of our hearts. We are alive to your imagining for a new world and ready to make creative difference. Daily we see and read of the failures of those in principal positions of care, whose treatment of patients, parishioners, clients, spouses, and children leave us feeling ashamed, yet also mindful of our own shortcomings. Change us, O God. Create within us the desire and capacity for a love that can gently hold, yet let go. A love that encounters all others with deep respect and is concerned with others' well-being above personal interest. We are alive in your imaginings for a new world and ready to make a creative difference. Our Creator, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, as we forgive those who trespass against us. But deliver us from evil. Offering is definitely in response to God's abundance and generous grace. May the gifts we share symbolize the softening of our hearts that truly want to live in God's way of love. There are a number of ways that you can give. The offering is being taken up in just a moment, so you'll see ushers coming down the aisle to take up the offering. If you are watching from home or here either way, you can certainly make a check payable to McDougall United Church. And it's possible to send in a number of post-dated checks if that's more convenient. You can send by e-transfer as well. We can do that. You can also use pre-authorized giving, which is a really nice way of doing it. Every month in the United Church of Canada automatically deducts the money that you want donated, so you don't have to worry about making out a check or doing anything special. And let's see, there's also ways to donate to Canada through Canada Helps. You can donate to the Ukrainian crisis through United Church of Canada as well. we give our gifts in gratitude for healing love, strengthening presence, and hope when things seem hopeless. Communicate your love with those around us. We do have a few announcements, and I'm hoping I remember them all. I believe what we are trying to do for a few weeks is a test drive. People are interested in staying for a few minutes and chatting around one of the tables in the back just to kind of discuss some questions that they might have regarding the sermon. So if you'd like to stay with me for a few minutes after the service is over and think about ways that we as people and as a church congregation can be more intentional and explicit in what we do, that is certainly very welcome. There was a message that I received this morning. It sounds like John Henry Weinleck is improving a bit in health. So we continue to hold John Henry and Larissa in our prayers. March 26th is the annual general meeting, and that's going to be at 12 noon, basically right after service. And we will be having the meeting regarding the budget a little bit later. We've done that before. We've needed to break it up, and we do need to break it up again this year. The good news is if you hate long meetings, as I do, it'll be a much shorter meeting that way. Just have two of them. And let's see, the Lenten Bible study is Tuesday at 7 p.m. and that's on Zoom. And I got a message that today, Sunday, March 19th, the University of Alberta is having a choral extravaganza, and that is at the Winsphere. And it looks like general admission for adults is $20, and then maybe, I think there's a $3 service charge per ticket. So I was asked to announce that as well. There may be a fourth announcement that I can't think of now. Are there any other announcements? Nothing on the music front? Seen shrugging shoulders. I'm going to assume probably not. I was thinking there might be somebody in concert when you go, come listen. I'm singing. Now let's see. Our closing hymn is Draw the Circle Wide, and that's More Voices, number 145. As we leave this time and place, may our whole being be opened to the love of God, that we may bring kindness, comfort, skill, and all that we have and are in service of God's word and God's people. The love of God, the life, and the love of Jesus and the wisdom and spirit goes with us always. Amen.